As we're getting pretty close, I want to thank you all for coming on board. Thank you very much. Now, if you like to have your camera off for some reason because you're in traffic or whatever, that's totally okay. Now, you've taken the time out today to be here, and I personally guarantee if you're able to turn the camera on, you'll get a little bit more value out of this afternoon or perhaps this morning's session, depending where you are. So if you're able to turn them on, that's all for your benefit. But I'm very excited today, as I am a lot of Sundays. I get to sit back and relax and let some of the wonderful coaches. Now, Maria has actually been coaching for quite some time. So she has joined our little program to upgrade her skills. So it's with great pride today that I get to watch her in action and take a bit of a back seat. I know one of the things she's most passionate about is helping people clarify what's really important. And I think it's really important for all of us to clarify what's really important and to keep doing that. Now, being able to do that enables us to really step forward and take the actions we need to take to create the life we need to take. But it's not always easy doing things by ourselves. And one thing that strikes me about Maria is her ability as a co-founder. See, a lot of people try to make things on her own, but she knows better, and she's partnered with other geniuses to create things in collaborations, like the Women's Network, the Monday Mornings Motivation. And I look forward to seeing more collaborations and results from Maria. So I will shut up and let her take the lead. But Maria, I'm really excited. And I recognize a couple of books on those shelves. So well done. Yes, yeah, you've done remarkably well, Maria. I'll shut up. I'll let you take the lead. If you want me for anything, I'll be right here enjoying. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Adrian, so much. And thank you for everybody to join today. I see lots of familiar faces, so thank you all for dedicating your Sunday evening or Sunday morning or whatever you are to this. As I said before, I want this to be an actual discussion. I'm not super comfortable with presentations as in just talking to people, because I feel that just boring for both parties. So today I would like to have an actual discussion about overwhelm and clarity. Now, I have been reminded many times that it's nicer to see my face while I talk compared to a slide in front of everybody's screen, but I will be sharing some slides at some point just to show everybody a couple of useful things. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show, for anybody who doesn't know me, although I think that in here it's pretty sure that everybody knows who I am. Regardless, what Adrian was talking about is the three things that I basically do with my time, which is Bridge, my coaching company, Monday Morning Motivation, which is an online community where we are interested in self-development, and we have webinars every Monday morning, 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. China time, and G.W.E.N, which is the Global Women Entrepreneurs Network, which I founded with a couple of friends back in 2018. And in Shanghai, we're still going strong with a few events coming up. So those are the three things that I do. And I do a lot more. So for anybody who doesn't know, just go to my website and browse to your heart's content. But I'm not super big on self introduction, so that's all I'm going to say. What I really, really want to talk with you guys about is overwhelm. Because who has never felt overwhelmed in your life? We all lived to 2020. I think that we all had some sort of overwhelming situation. Whether that's related to work, whether that's related to personal life, whether that's related to global events, we all can relate to this word, overwhelm. And it can go from pretty big to pretty small, but it always feels in a different way for each and every one of us. So what I would like to start and what I would like to hear from you guys is a little bit about, if you want to share, feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself if you want to speak. I would like to know, when is the last time that you felt overwhelmed? Could be this morning, could be 3 years ago. What was it? Okay, so Michelle in the chat says today. Okay, that's pretty recent. All right, okay.
Friday.
Friday, okay. All right. Okay. Darko says most of the time. Okay. Alicia says 2 hours ago. Oh wait, I have to pull up the chat. This is going too fast. Actually, most days, 2 hours ago, looking for the space for the wellness center. I can understand how that feels overwhelming, Alicia. Sarah says all of last week. Adrian says 2 or 3 weeks ago, way too much on that week. Piero says the past week. Okay. So whether that was this morning, last week, a couple of weeks ago, you all have identified one situation that made you feel overwhelmed. Okay. And we're going to explore a little bit more. But what I want to ask you before we go into all the analysis and all the things that we try to understand, I want you guys to focus on one thing. How does overwhelm feel? What is the feeling that you associate with overwhelm? We understand the word, right? But when you all thought back this morning, Friday, last week, 2 weeks ago, you all had an idea in your mind. And probably, if the feeling was strong enough, you may have felt how overwhelmed felt today, last week, 2 weeks ago. How does that feel? Ben says, racing heart, racing thoughts. Okay. So, like a spinning wheel. Hero says, fatigued, stressed, anxiety, suffocating, fatigued, frustrated, stressful and inability to take action. Okay. Unable to
I have
focus.
more like a sound, you know, it's more like something like that. How to call that? It's like, no, something, I don't know how to express it in words, but that's what it is.
No, but that's the beauty of feelings. You don't need words, because the second you said, everybody understood, like the need for distance, right? The need for pause, messy, tired, exhausted, unable to focus on anything. So Yolanda.
Cannot breathe.
Cannot breathe, right? That you feel
heavy, like a stone in my chest.
Right. And whether all of these feelings resonate with you or whether you only feel a few of them, we all have one particular or a couple of particular feelings that we associate with overwhelm. And just by reading the list and hearing you guys, they're not positive ones. Because overwhelm doesn't feel good. Nobody wants to feel overwhelmed. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but we don't want to feel that.
Although,
Yes,
actually, it's
Yolanda?
also exciting. It's a kind of an excitement as well, because it makes me very lively. It brings me into a certain struggle, which then brings me into this survival mode, which has a lot of creativity and resourcefulness. So actually, it's not only negative. It's just like the first moment's like, and then it's like, okay, how do I fight? Oh no, like I want to fight it. I don't know. Minimum for me.
No, interesting. And how do you get from the overwhelm to the fighting mode?
No other way.
Okay, sure.
Yes, done. It's like I want to push, I want to do it, right? I need to handle it. So that's why, like, it's overwhelming, but then it's kind of also okay, but it has to be done. So don't cry and hide if not possible. Also, it's a nice thing to hide, but procrastination also a good thing. But no, no, just like the knowledge that it will go over, and you have not to push. Just push, go, go, go. Fight mode, I guess. No, fight, flight, and so on. I don't know.
Well, Yolanda has already made the 3 steps to go from the overwhelming situation. No, it's okay. It's good for you. Great for you, because you have already one strategy that can help you to go from the, oh gosh, what is happening, to I have to do something. But for many of us, and it may be in different situations, it can happen in different ways. Sometimes that overwhelming feeling is so strong that we feel trapped. I heard a few saying, E was saying like a stone on your chest. Someone in the chat was saying like a feeling that you can't do anything, like you're trapped and you don't know what to do. And so you stay still, you stay fixed. And that usually is the enemy of resolving that state. Because if you stay in that state with the overwhelm and with the panic, it might pass, but it doesn't create an opportunity to do something else. So what we're going to look at today is how to take that feeling, that overwhelmed feeling, and try to make something out of it. And we're going to do that with a very, very easy way. And let's see if I can share my screen properly.
Maria, could I just ask one bit from my observation while you're doing that?
Absolutely. Go on.
I find, and I've in my mind categorized it, overwhelmed, that feeling, which is similar in 2 circumstances. One is external things which cause it, and then there's the internal cause, which is the mind questioning. So I'm just sort of categorizing, because I find I'm able to deal with the external causes one much better and easier than I am with the internal one, because obviously my state of mind is different. So I just wanted to throw that point in there to look at how there's 2 different concepts to me of overwhelm.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Jay. Do you find that it's easier for the outside sources for a particular reason, or is just a habit that you have?
Interesting. I think I can rationalize in my mind, because I don't feel I'm the cause. So I can look at a number of issues and go, well, this is happening, that's happening. I might have been the catalyst for a lot of those things happening, and that's what I accept, that anything that happens from an external source, I've usually had some prior involvement and maybe not done something, but I can know what the situation is. I can think clearly around what are all the things that's happened and go, well, okay, where do I start? How can I deal with this? I can plan some action. When it's within and my mind starts working at, oh God, I've got all these things that I haven't done or whatever, and procrastination, as Yolanda says, is one of the big ones that leads to this. I have difficulty really trying to find clarity out of the fog of all that.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing, Jay. And what Jay did is basically what I was literally about to say. So fantastic. Well done.
Sorry.
Which is literally, when we feel overwhelmed, the furthest thing usually from our mind is dive deep into it, because sometimes it feels so scary or like so trapping that we want to escape, right? We want to maybe do something else, like not think about it. And I understand that feeling. I've been there many, many times. But what I found lately, and I think I have to thank Yolanda for this, which is to stay with the feeling of overwhelm and try to understand it a little bit better. And that's why what I was showing before, that I closed so that we could hear Jay properly, is basically this 3-step that I call a clarity roadmap. That is 3 really simple steps that on paper or on screen, they look very easy, but taking them through when you're overwhelmed might feel a little bit challenging if you don't have practice. So what we're going to do today is go through these steps and see if we can work a little bit more on how to go from the overwhelmed feeling and state to a state of clarity where you can actually implement things and know what to do. So the first step that we have kind of sort of done right now is starting with the review and reflect. Review a time that you were overwhelmed. How did you feel? How does it usually feel? Does it feel different? Like Jay mentioned, like to him, it feels easier to deal with external overwhelm, and it feels a little bit harder to deal with internal overwhelm. And that might be for other people, might be the opposite, might be a completely different way. But reviewing and seeing what works for you and what happens to you, it's step number 1. Step number 2 is usually, of the reflection side, is why? What is the trigger? What is triggering us to be overwhelmed? Is that email from the client or the boss that says, hey, I'm waiting for that report that was due 3 days ago? Is a loved one having a problem that we don't know how to solve? Is throwing it out there, a global pandemic that we don't know how to solve alone? What is triggering overwhelm? It might be something as small as a text message, a phone call, or something that happened on the street. It could be something as big as a life-changing event, a devastating news, or anything, really. There's no difference in the feeling that we get, but the trigger can be different. So, and this is something that if you're comfortable with, I would love for you guys to share. If you don't feel comfortable, there's no need to. Why do you feel overwhelmed? What is, maybe, if it feels more comfortable, what is the more common reason for you to feel overwhelmed? What is it related to? What is it connected to? Let's take Jay's example. Is it internal or external? Is it connected to something that you have agency on? Is it connected to something that it's completely outside of your control? These are things that you might have already thought about, or you might have not. Take a little time and think about it. I see with the corner of my eye that the chat is moving, so I'll just go and go look over there. So, okay, Yolanda says, when a situation isn't depending on me, but on other people's information or action. Okay, so this is a mix between, so something you have to do, but then you're waiting for someone else to do something, right? So it's out of your control. You can't do anything.
It's depending on unpredictable factors or something like that, my action. So it's out of my hands, yeah, to act.
So that feels overwhelming because you don't know, is the unknown.
Yeah, it's the uncertainty of the outcome, because it's, but it's not fully that, actually, I think, because I'm happy I have enough resources to always adjust to the certain situation, but I need the information, like certain kind of information. But yeah, I counter it with like trusting that I will be fine at any given moment. So yeah, but this sometimes does stress me out when I don't get the information I need.
Absolutely. Especially if the situation is very urgent, you might feel even more overwhelmed. Yes, Adrian.
Yeah, Maria, this is excellent because, a lot of the time this will happen and we won't pick it up. So stopping and looking at why, absolutely beautiful. Sometimes I find myself, and then, oh, that's right. I had overwhelm and I get back into it, and then yeah. Absolutely beautiful point here, figuring out the why.
Thank you. And while I look through all the rest, what Adrian makes a really good point. A lot of the time, it's the first step. It might not be enough, but recognizing the state of overwhelm is a very powerful thing to do. Because sometimes we just feel it and we don't really stop and try to understand what's happening, and brushing it away or trying to ignore it, it's usually not going to be any good. So while it might feel uncomfortable, recognizing and stopping and taking a few deep breaths. I'm sure that I'm sure that Ben has a lot of techniques that he might teach us later for like taking that moment to actually analyze what's happening in a calmer state, because of course overwhelm might feel very agitated. A few people were saying racing heart, inability to do anything and feeling panicky. That's not a great mental situation to be in if you want to analyze. So do whatever you need to do to calm yourself down and take a couple of moments to analyze why that's happening. Alicia says, when I cannot see a way to the things I need or want to. Okay, so there's a dissonance between the things that you want to achieve and then where you are, and you don't see where the way is, where the path is going. John
Usually
says,
it's because of a lack of time. Usually because it's a lack of time. Yeah.
Lack of time. Okay. So if the same situation happens and you have enough time to figure that out, does it feel less overwhelming or not overwhelming at all?
If I can find a way to find the time to do it, then I'm much better. But it's like a puzzle. Like I always can usually find ways to do things, but if I can't find an actual way to fit everything in the time that's allotted, then that's when I get overwhelmed.
Thank you for sharing. Time usually has a lot to do with it because urgency makes things seem more important, and they might not be, but they definitely feel much more life and death situations that they might actually be. And that contributes to I was about to say a word, I don't think it exists, it doesn't matter, to making overwhelm feel more overwhelming, unoverwhelmingly.
That's true.
John
So it's like
says,
the urgency and importance, like the urgency and importance. Yeah.
I was not planning to say that, but if anybody wants to look up the Eisenhower time management matrix, that's one of the things that can help with this, but we'll talk about that later, maybe in the questions. John says, when losing control of a situation or multiple. Care to elaborate, or multiple, John, as in multiple situations happening at the same time?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
When like multiple of situation happening at the same time, and one or couple of them, it's like I need to brainstorm to get things done, and then I got pushed from the other person to do something that he's supposed or she's supposed to do. It's like going out of my comfort zone on a multiple level.
Okay. That's like a compound level of one small thing is doable, two things are kind of okay, but 3, 4, 5 things, then they become overwhelming.
No, for me it's 6, 7, 8, 9 is overwhelming.
I remind you that you did get 300,000 t-shirts done in a ridiculous amount of time once.
Yeah, that's why I was having another 3 orders at the same time in parallel.
Right. So again, multiple situation and time have a lot to do with it, with John's example as well. Jay says, the feeling of being responsible for the situation that is created. Okay. So in that case, is the connection between something external and something internal, right? That might have this feeling of overwhelm. And Pierrot said, fear of loss or failure of a project, thinking it over and over and doing nothing about it. That's a feeling that I think everybody's very, very familiar with. The running the scenarios in your head and thinking of a problem, but actually never doing anything about it. That's like overwhelm 101, because you are worried about something. Of course, you are feeling overwhelmed, and your brain thinks that the more you think about it, the more you analyze it, the more you think about it, it keeps like it somehow will get better on its own. Well, you are whole smart human beings. You know that that's not true. You know that just thinking about things in your head and going the proverbial hamster wheel in your head, it's not going to solve anything. It doesn't mean we don't do it. It just means that we have to try and train ourselves to get out of that, to get out of the idea of, well, I'll just think about it, and at some point it will solve itself. It might, Nothing is impossible, but it's not an active way to deal with the problem. Sarah says lack of security, fear of failure. Sense a theme here: failure, time, and pressure from other people. Danielle says, I can vacillate between ownership and victim when it's when I feel like a victim that I feel overwhelmed. So that is connected to the idea of the loss of control, that you're not having any control over whatever situation you are. You feel that something has been done to you and you don't have the opportunity to react, maybe. Adrian says, stop, listen, learn, and why. Yes, analysis and why is very important. Time is a key factor. Thank you for rephrasing my sentence, Adrian. I didn't know what I was saying. Thank you.
A couple of key quotes, that was brilliant. A couple of brilliant points in there.
Okay, I'll make sure I write it later for a quote sometime. So we looked very briefly at like why we're overwhelmed, right? So we did the review and reflect, and again, that might take 5 minutes. It might take an hour. It might take a day. It depends on what the situation is and how strong is the feeling of overwhelm. But that is is step number 1, review and reflect. But as I just mentioned, if we only get stuck in there, we don't get to the other steps, which are visualize and plan and the actual action. So we dwelled a little bit on how overwhelmed feels. Now let's try and do something else. How does clarity feel? Do you remember the last time that you had absolute clarity on what you were doing, why you were doing it, what you were going, and the direction you were taking? How does that feel?
Certainty.
Certainty, okay. What else?
Peace.
Ease, okay. So certainty is, Adrian says, compared to overwhelm, it feels orgasmic. That's a good point. What else? How does clarity feel? Does it have a feeling? We talked about how does overwhelm feel. It feels sometimes like a stone, like something is oppressing us, like something is tying us down. Does clarity have maybe the opposing feeling? Tian says hopeful, excited, light, and right. That's a very good point and very big distinction. Align, it feels like relief. It feels uplifting. It feels energetic. Ben says cool breeze on my face, smiling and confident. Empowerment. Well, you don't have to be trained in anything to see the difference between the adjectives and the words that you guys were using at the beginning for overwhelm and the difference with these adjectives and these words that we're using now to define clarity. And again, I think we all agree that we would like to feel more like clarity compared to overwhelm. So how do we get there? How do we get from the place where you are so stuck and so fixed that you can't seem to see the light at the end of the tunnel, to that cool, light, energetic, empowering, and right feeling of knowing what to do? There's 1,000 ways to do it. Everybody has their own particular tactics because you all went through overwhelm before. So you all already successfully went from overwhelm to clarity. You might not have thought of doing that consciously, or you might not have stopped and reflect on how you did that, but I'm sure you have already done that in some way, shape, or form. Yolanda says, procrastination is a great tool. Yes. Human beings are lazy and our brain is very lazy. If there's anything that requires effort, we don't want to do it. That's why we have to train our brain to get a tiny bit more happy.
That's a very
about
natural implementation on that one, because procrastination is like, because that topic is still with you, right? I mean, you don't really push it away. You just push the action of it away, but you're working on it. And so this time you get to work on it can suddenly click and give you the idea and the creativity to come to gather a resourceful state and an idea. And so I don't feel procrastination is always that negative.
No, I agree with you. I think that we might just want to use a different word. Call it like, like refocusing, or like having a more like
Hot pot.
brainstorm kind of state. What?
Yeah, I have a different understanding.
Sorry, Ben.
Oh, yes.
Yolanda.
Oh, sorry.
You finish your thing?
I have a different understanding of procrastination. Like I think the moments of brilliance come to us when the left brain switches off. Procrastination means we're doing the same thing over and over again, and this one goes to pattern. So when we finally hit that pattern in procrastination, we receive a thought. Just food for thought.
Mm-hmm. I'm 100% a supporter of, if you're stuck in something, you can give it a little bit of time, and sometimes it feels like the answer comes to you. For me, procrastination is more the deliberate act of saying, I'll do it tomorrow, and then you never do. So that's just, I think it's a terminology difference, but yeah. So because we're looking at, we looked at the review and reflect. Now we went to the visualize and planning. I asked you guys, how does clarity feel? You all had an image in your head. You might have a feeling. I heard light, breeze, confident. That is the visualizing part. We all know that we want to get there. And we have A, we have B. Now we just need to figure out how to go from A to B. So we already done a bit of the work in knowing where we are and where we want to be. Now let's figure out what the way looks like. And that's the planning part. That is also the coolest animation of this whole PPT, which is called the 4A framework, which is basically taking a little bit of time to go through this 4As. And it's very, very easy. It doesn't take as long as you think it does. It just requires the presence and the focus of actually doing it. Realize that you are aware of your overwhelm. You have identified it, you have understood why. Be aware that that's how you feel. Don't push it away. That's how you feel. It's okay. You're doing something about it. Go a little bit deeper on the analysis. We looked at the why, and the idea is that, okay, I understand why it's happening. Is that just one cause? Is that just because of time? Is it just because of other people? Or it might be a combination of situations. Try to understand really what is happening. Also, in this part, the analysis would be in understanding is, what is the situation? Is the situation really what I think it is? Or am I interpreting the situation through the lenses of overwhelm? Is it really a catastrophic situation as I think it is? Or do I need to look at it a little bit more carefully and understand that maybe, just maybe, the world is not ending right now? That's sometimes how overwhelm can feel. It can feel very catastrophic. But the reality of the situation might not be that bad. Then, and this is the pivot step, is finding the one thing that you can do in order to unstuck yourself. Regardless of how small that thing is, regardless of how tiny that step is, what is the one thing that if you do that, you get a tiny bit of momentum, a tiny bit of action, and then you can start feeling a little bit more closer to that light, to that clarity, to that breeze, to that feeling of confidence, as opposed to that stone on your chest. And then the simplest to say and the hardest to do, just do it. And that is what we might get stuck sometimes. Because if we plan on a thing that is just too big, we might have a difficulty on doing the action part. If we feel that overwhelm can only be solved by the biggest plan imaginable, we'll have a lot of trouble getting into the action part because it feels too big. Then we go back to the overwhelm, and then we get stuck into this wheel of trying to have grand plans and feeling they're too big for us. And so I feel overwhelmed. And then I get like, I spiral all over and over again. So for me, what really helped me was finding a tiny, tiny step that I can do so that one thing can get a little bit better. And that is the spark that can shift your mindset from negative and overwhelmed mindset to something that it's a little bit more action oriented. I see in the chat, because there's a bunch of coaches in the house. So yes, a coach can definitely help you do that, especially an accountability coach or someone to talk to. If you have someone you can do this reasoning with, it might help even to get a different perspective. It might help to get an outside perspective of something that you might not be able to see yourself. Because in that overwhelmed state, you might be too connected, too deep into that situation to see things clearly. That's why when we feel overwhelmed, we go to family and friends and coaches and bosses and peers or other people, and we sometimes just feel the need to unload so that we can get more clarity in our brains while we talk. I know I do that a lot. Some other people may need to paint or draw or write or go for a run. But that process of trying to get clarity is following these same steps, not necessarily in an aware fashion. So anybody has, now that we've gone through it, anybody remembers a time that you got yourself through the steps from the awareness to the actual idea and that you got something done? Because I'm sure that all of you have done that before. Whether you were aware of it or you remember, that's a different thing. But I would love to know if someone has an example of going through this. Jay says, I find that 20 minutes of low-level exercise is the way to get our mental function back. Absolutely. Sometimes the best way to get unstuck is physically move and go and do something so that you don't feel so rooted and so tied. Yes, Yolanda, that's a way of moving. Danielle said, jumping on a trampoline. Oh, that sounds fun. Can we get access to a trampoline? I also want to try a trampoline. Sounds like a great idea to release some stressful energy and just like get literally a different perspective from the world. Of course, it's on Taobao. I should have known, but thank you for sharing. The idea is that going from that overwhelm to clarity is basically understanding that we are in that state. We want to know what the situation is and basically trying to go and see what is the resources that I can find. Do I have already the resources? And if I don't, how can I get those resources to go and take the first step? That's literally what you need. Sometimes you don't have the resources because, as Yolanda was mentioning, things don't depend on you. You're waiting for other people, things are out of your control. And you get some resources to deal with that. Yes, how? And there you go with the action. Give me a sec, I'll read all the things. Ben said there's trampolines discussion in the chat. You guys can go and see it. There's a simple breath pattern to center focus again. I would love, Ben, if you would show that later, because I know nothing about breath work and I know you do. So please feel free to take through that later. Meditation, calm the mental chatter. There's a couple of people here who are very, very familiar with meditation. I still am not, so I'll defer to people like Sasha, I see in the chat, that is much better at meditation than I am. So yes, meditation can definitely help. Alicia says, write or draw it all down, what I need to do, color coding it and mind mapping. Yes, I'm much more on the writing stuff down. I have a bunch of journals that I do and I write when I feel very overwhelmed, and that helps me. But that is not necessarily what everybody feels comfortable with. Sasha, for me, I stop and reflect and try to find the best possible action. If I manage to find something that I believe is close to the best possible, then I feel much better. Great, interesting choice word, Sasha, because for me, what I used to struggle a lot, and I still struggle with a little bit, is, well, I'm in this situation now, and I want to find the best possible solution, that it's the best possible thing on all levels. Yeah. That just doesn't work. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be the perfect situation for anything. But finding the better solution, it's better than finding the best solution, because the best solution might be out of reach, might be too big, might be a bigger step that you need to take than what you need right now. So moving, doing something is better than spending time and planning the best that you can do. So better is better than best. Well, someone had said something much clever about that, but I forget. Anyway, if anybody remembers, feel free to type it in the chat. Yolanda says, think of what I need, and if it's really what really prevented, or another strategy would work. Yeah. Follow happiness and joy. Okay, that is one criteria to determine what action can be done. Absolutely. The action can be as small as meditate for 5 minutes. It could be as big as I decide to change my life completely, but the first step in changing my life is, because the big plans don't go hand in hand with getting yourself out of overwhelm. Now that we have an idea of what we want to do, the last thing that we have to do is act and maintain. Again, sounds simple, easy enough to say, hard to do if we don't do it with a focused attitude. How do we do that? Well, the first thing is, what is your one next step? Remember, I said that before. What is the one thing that you can do right now that will make everything else unnecessary or easier? This is not mine. This is from a very good book called The One Thing. It's called The Clarifying Question, which basically means if you have trouble prioritizing, if you have trouble deciding what you need to do in the midst of a lot of options, think about it in this way. What is the one thing that if I do that, it makes everything else easier or unnecessary? Might take a while to figure that out, but the idea is to find that one thing that will unstuck you to get you moving again. So I would like to invite everyone to think back of the situation of overwhelm that you felt today, Friday, last week, 2 weeks ago. If that situation has not been resolved yet, take a moment and try to think about, what is the one thing you can do? What is the one small step that you can do in order to get you unstuck in that situation? You might have the answer already. You might need some time to think about it. That's okay. Sometimes, as we said before, ideas just come to our head. Sometimes we need a little bit more time. Keep that question coming. What is the one thing, the one next step that you can do in order to get moving? And remember, it has to be a tiny, tiny step. Because if you make it too big, we go back to the overwhelm again. Now you will say, yes, Maria, fine, that's very nice and easy. And then I plan things all the time. And then I don't go through with them. Because life happens, because things happen, and I don't have control over them. Fair. I hear you. I understand. Have you ever thought of what obstacles you might foresee in your path? And have you already thought of strategies that you might use to overcome these obstacles? Again, go back to the one thing you can do. If it's easy enough, like drinking a sip of water, you might not need the step. But if the step is, for example, I don't know, planning a trip somewhere, then you might foresee obstacles. What are these obstacles and how can you overcome them? If your overwhelm comes from a situation involving another person or other people, and the first step is going to talk to these people, what possible reactions might they have? How can you best prepare yourself in order to overcome those obstacles, in order to achieve that one thing that you want to do to get clarity? There's 1,000 examples that you could have, but the key is to try and already think about potential obstacles. And this is in no way, shape, or form foolproof, because we cannot just foresee everything, and unforeseen things will happen. But if you already start with some knowledge or some thought about potential obstacles, then this might be a little bit easier. Anybody cares to share if you have already thought about what is your next step?
You mean like in a specific case, or you mean like in general when overwhelmed? What could be my next step to come out of the overwhelm?
It depends. If you have, as I said at the beginning, if you have a situation that you were thinking about before that has not been resolved, maybe this has helped you to find one step to do to resolve that. Or maybe you can think more in general. If you know yourself enough to know that every time that X happens, you get overwhelmed and you haven't found a way to deal with that, maybe you want to think, okay, every time X happens, I want to do Y. So Piero said, it's a project and I'm stuck, but I have different steps I can take. I have started with forwarding them an email to inquire more from someone. Okay, so your first step is to ask people more information. Fantastic. So the more information you have, the more you can plan whatever you need to plan. Also, if the next step is not clear, or you might get stuck into thinking, but there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can possibly do because it's not in my control. Well, think about what opportunities would you like to have and how you can go about to create those. If you don't have right now the opportunity to do anything, is there anything you can do to create that opportunity? The answer might still be no, but still you're exploring more things. Yes, Jacopo?
For me, for example, it was about changing the daily routine. So one very simple thing I did is introducing a little time during my day just for myself. And I've been practicing meditation for the past few years, but always very sporadically. So then I started at some point say, what if I dedicate, even if it's just 20 minutes every day in the morning or before going to bed, but that's one single goal I try to achieve every day. And of course, you have the mind that doesn't really want to stay there doing nothing, just focusing on your breath. So very often, you find excuses. You're like, I can really do this tomorrow, and then you're like, no, I take 15 minutes at least, and kind of educate yourself and doing it every day. And you don't need anyone, and not really need a specific place. So really, you don't have any excuse unless dealing with yourself. And I found really fascinating how changing your behavior and habits really affects you. So you start a day with a different mindset. And I remember that there were times where I was waking up and grab my phone, and you stop the alarm, and then you right after in seconds open up the emails, and you're like, oh, I need to deliver this, so I need to answer these long emails, and you feel like straight into anxious and a bit overwhelmed sometimes. So I don't know, for me it worked, but everyone has different techniques, as you said. But changing the daily routine is super powerful.
Absolutely. Thank you. It just reminded me that last year when I was in Italy and I got stuck, I used to wake up to WeChat and I had like 500 messages. And after a couple of weeks, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. This is just making my day start in a ridiculous way. And I was just waking up overwhelmed. So what I did is put my phone in airplane mode. When my alarm was off, put the alarm off, go to the kitchen, make myself a cup of tea, try to breathe, write, do anything. And then after I was in a better state, I would turn my phone on, usually turn my phone on silent, leave it there, and then come back after a few minutes so I would not see the amount of messages just coming in, but just giving myself that time between waking up and dealing with whatever I know it was coming, that was enough to gain a little bit of distance and clarity. And then I knew what I needed to do. Yes, Chris.
Maria, I find that a lot of people who are overwhelmed use the word need. I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do all of these things. Most of the time, people want to do all of those things. It's not a need, it's not a requirement, it's not a necessity. And so when you replace the word need with want, then it becomes a lot easier to prioritize those things that are important rather than those things that have this false sense of necessity in someone's life. There's a lot of things that I want to do, and I can fill my day from sun up to sundown and beyond. But I don't need to do any of those things, but I want to do them all. And I'm not overwhelmed. Are you?
There you go. Well, that's one option of like just reframing the verb that you use instead of saying I need, saying I want. And that's a great point. And actually, sometimes you might ask yourself if you really want to do any of those things. And if not, then they just drop at the bottom of the list. Need or I should. Yes. Another one that we use a lot, John, is I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Well, should you? Should you really? Maybe yes, maybe not. Only you know, but just even asking yourself the question, sometimes it's enough to understand if that is a thing that you should be even considering or you shouldn't. All right. So with that, you might not have realized it, but an hour has passed. And with that, we have successfully gone through the process of, well, my PPT being all weird, but the thing. Where is the thing? Sorry, bear with me. There we go. Ooh. Okay. Well, we've successfully gone through at least talking about the circle, the clarity roadmap. It will take a lot longer to actually go through each and every one of yours state and overwhelm and reflection and visualizing, planning and maintain. But this was just to give you an introduction of one possible process, one possible framework to go from overwhelm to clarity. And now I would like to open up the floor for questions. But before you do that, take off your phones. Take out your phones. I can't talk anymore. Anybody would like a free ebook? It took me a while to write, but if you guys want, you can get a fantastic book that is called Tools for Time Management for Clarity. It's tiny, it's like 30 something pages, but there's lots of love, a labor of love. And if you guys want it, it's there, you can get it. Also, if the code doesn't work, just message me, I'll send that to you. But it should work because there you go. Thank you, Yolanda, because it took me a while to set it up. So if it works, I'm happy. If it doesn't, message me. I'll send that to you. It's actually based on another time management talk. It works? Okay, well, I'm happy it works in China. Good, Yolanda. It's a PDF. It's collection of a couple of things regarding time. It's about time mindset. It's about the excuses we make. It's about a few tools that you can use to get yourself at a place where you are less overwhelmed by things you need to do and the time to do those. So it's a way of using time management to get more clarity. Definitely not the only one, but one of my favorites. And I'll be sharing that. And if anybody wants more clarity, there's other stuff I do. On Saturday, if you're in Shanghai, I'm doing basically the clarity roadmap, but with goal setting. We're at Campfire. It's a fantastic location. And if you are not in Shanghai and maybe not in Europe because the time is a bit weird, I'm running again my Change Catalyst, which is an effectiveness program. And I'm doing that all online, and it's going to be at midday because I've done that in the evenings and people have asked for another time slot. So I'm giving midday, like 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. a try. If it works, great. And that's it. Questions? That's me. You all should have all these, but in case you don't, connect.
Maria, you had mentioned a book before that you talked about with I don't remember which one. You had mentioned that there was a book that talked about the clarity and besides this one, like that you referenced.
Was that the
Yes.
one-step thing?
The book is called The One Thing.
Could you put that in the chat?
Absolutely.
If you know who it's by, that would be great. Thank you. I'm sure your book will be better anyway, but
I appreciate it, but it's a different book. I can get to the chat. I might need to stop sharing. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Adrian. But yes, it's called The One Thing. And it's actually one of the first books that I have read like in an afternoon. To be honest, I was in lockdown. I didn't have a lot to do, but it's a relatively quick read and it's very, very good. It's all this idea of like, when you have a lot of things, how do you prioritize? And to use that question, the clarifying question, applied to many things that go from life goals to what email to answer first. So it's a very, very good book. I recommend that. I use that question very, very often.
Maria, could you share a little bit about your own books?
Yes.
Have you co-written or have you written your own completely from front to back?
Well, the time management for clarity one I've written, which is the ebook that you all should have been able to download, hopefully by the link I shared. And another book co-authored is this one. It's the 365 Days of Motivation. This is the old version, but it's me and Janine's photo. Which is for the Monday Morning Motivation Project, which is a collection of quotes and gratitude, journaling, and I usually can do this, and goal setting. So this is a thing that you can use every day or whenever you need to get a little bit of inspiration and use it as a journal. And she's not here, but I'm gonna plug something that like, there's another friend of mine, Rajni, who has done another fantastic journaling thing. And so journaling is actually one of my favorite things to do to get out of overwhelm and get to clarity, because I like to write. But that's what works for me. I know that for some people, just the idea of like sitting down and writing things, it's more overwhelming. So in that case, you should not go with that as your default solution. But for me, it works really well. I actually started doing that last year when I got locked down. I was writing, there's a website called 750words.com, which is basically a tracker that lets you like write at least 750 words every day. And it's done for writers to get them out of writer's block. And I started using it just in the morning to just type whatever I was thinking. And then it went way longer than 750 words, but it was a very good starter. Say, okay, I just need to write whatever. It doesn't have to be a novel. It doesn't have to be anything. It's just to get thoughts out of my head. And that really, really helped.
If I could add for the coaches in the house, just buy one of her books hard copy, do it for a couple of months. And if you're thinking about making your own something like that, Rajni's made a great one. I think she's got 21 entries in there, but just grab Maria's, work it for a month or two, And then look at making your own one for your own clients and when you get on stage. I'm looking to get a hard copy in Australia, actually.
Well, we'll try to make that happen. I don't know how international shipping works these days, but I'm sure we can try. We have an ebook, which is not the same, I understand, but times are what they are.
Okay, I'm really curious how you get so much done. Because you've got a lot on, and you get so much done. How do you organize your time so effectively?
How much time do you have? It's a very long answer.
Well, we can have a discussion here. So if anyone likes to raise any topics, do feel free. We have another 20 minutes if anyone likes to raise discussions. But you managed stopping a bit early in case anyone had questions. And I have questions because I'm curious how you get so much done.
Of course. Well, there's no real trick. The idea is for me is that I'm obsessed by like rewarding ticks and like apps that give you like points, because my brain is very, very attracted to like points and like rewards. So what I do is basically I have a a to-do list app that I put literally everything I need to do in. And then I just go through that religiously every day. And I don't always get all the things done, but you can have all the priorities sorted out. And so if it's not in there or it's not in my calendar, it doesn't get done. There's a theory, actually. Thank you for sharing. I'll share that later. But if you guys are, if you have access to YouTube, you can look up the. I'll type in the chat.
GTD. Some of us here might be the reverse. If it's in our calendar, it doesn't get done. But you're saying if it's not in your calendar, it doesn't get done.
And I actually, anybody can use any, this is a very strong philosophy of mine. You don't need fancy apps. I'm a sucker for fancy apps because I spend way too much time on apps and things that I can like make my productivity better, but you don't need any of that. What you need is just one thing to get the things from your brain to a different place. And that's the second brain idea. I put in the chat, there's a very good YouTube video by Ali Abdal. He's a Oxford, Harvard doctor who has productivity stuff online. But the idea is that your brain is not made to remember. Your brain is made to process information. If you give your brain too much information to store, things will fall through the cracks. Like, it doesn't matter unless you have a photographic memory and like extreme training, you can't remember everything. And you shouldn't, because that's not what your brain is made for. So the idea of the second brain is have a system, have a notepad, have a whiteboard, have whatever that can help you to take things off your brain and somewhere else. Now, the trick is this somewhere else has to be useful enough and present enough in your life that you actually review whatever you put down. Because if you just write it on a piece of paper and put it in a drawer, that's not going to be helpful. I see Yolanda pulling out her little notepad, right? Right. And if it's something that's always with you, like for example, for me, my app, which Danielle, yes, I saw your question, it's called Todoist. It's called Todoist. But there's 1,000. Like you can literally spend a day on any app store looking for to-do list apps. But for me, I have it on my computer and on my phone, which means that if I'm on my phone, I can just type things in very quickly. And then when I'm on my computer, I just pull it up and see whatever I need to do. And for me, that's incredibly helpful because I don't need to keep things in my head because I know I will forget. I know. And it's pointless for me to try and remember everything because I won't. And so I don't give myself that pressure. If it's in there, I sometimes say like, make dinner. Just so that I remember that I need to make dinner. Maybe I remember anyway, but in case I forget, it's there. Yes, thank you, Adrian. It's Gary Keller. I completely forgot the name of the guy.
Now, guys, I asked her this for a couple of questions. One, for my own curiosity, and two, this is part of the meta program. This is a going meta. So getting the idea of Maria's always focused on one thing or has one thing, has one clear goal. So when she gets overwhelmed, she can do these things and get back to that one thing. Some of us have multiple things and we're not focused on the one thing. So we get overwhelmed, and then what do we focus? Oh. So we get overwhelmed, and then we got multiple things to focus on. Whereas Maria may get overwhelmed one thing, not overwhelmed three things.
I'm going to share another recommendation for a book, because there's a guy who's called G.W.E.N. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but you might want to look it up. He has written one book that's called Essentialism, and he has another book that I pre-ordered, which is called Effortless. If you look at Essentialism up on Google, you have this beautiful image, which is a sphere with a lot of arrows going everywhere. And the arrows are very short, because if you try to do a lot of things at the same time, you have a very short reach, because your energy, your time, your resources, your mental energy are limited. But if you take all that energy and focusing on one thing, then the reach increases, your energy increases, the time you can dedicate to that thing increases. It doesn't mean that you only have to focus on one thing forever, but consciously deciding what to focus on, it's, for me, has been life-changing. Instead of trying to do everything at the same time, focus on one thing at a time. And it might be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, a day, a week. It doesn't have to be one thing forever. But I'm a big proponent of multitasking is a lie. It doesn't work, so you shouldn't do it.
Maria,
Sorry, Chris.
To answer Adrian's question from a little while ago, where he said, Maria, how do you get so much done? I think that a big part of that answer, Adrian, is what doesn't she get done? And I can't speak for her, but I can speak for myself. I don't get Facebook done. I don't get WeChat moments done. I don't get email interruptions done. There's a time for emails, and that's the time for emails. Then there's a time for working. Then sometime later, there's a time for emails. There's no time for interruptions. Interruptions don't get done. And so, Adrian, let me ask you, what don't you get done?
Marketing. I'm constantly I get a coach, right? And they're like, Adrian, you just got to get on Facebook and do video. Like, yeah, don't get that done.
Maria, what do you have to say about my general concept?
Well, I think that's a very good point, is that what you focus on, you have to leave something behind. Like that's one thing, as in, I don't do Facebook. My mom, who's here, does Facebook much more than I do. And I just don't do Facebook because I don't like it, and it takes too much time, and I don't need it, and I don't want to do it. So I consciously decide not to do that, to focus on something else. At the same time, distractions. Like, I could talk about distraction forever, but we don't have forever. We live with this little black box next to us literally almost every hour of the day. Do we need it? Sometimes. Very, very useful, extremely helpful. Do we need it all the time? Debatable, very debatable. I took the habit of just putting my phone on airplane mode when I'm in meetings. If I'm in a meeting, I'm just not talking to anybody who's not in my meeting anyway, so why should I have my phone going off? I'll answer whatever's happening after my meeting. And I know that if I don't do that, I will have the pull of like going and checking my phone. But if I know it's on airplane mode, well, nothing is getting through anyway, so I'm just not. And that is one way to handle distraction.
And
one of 1,000.
I had a little picture in my mind. You're focused on one thing, and around your home or your office, you might have things up for that one thing. So on the wall, on the door, on the mirror is a little post-it note about the one thing. And as you walk around your environment, you're reminded about the one thing you're accomplishing this week or this month, or the number one thing to do now. So you're walking around your environment, and the whole environment is set up to remind you of that one thing, and maybe some side ideas around that one thing. Compared to multitasking, where you might have do this, do that, do this, and then it's just setting yourself up for more distractions. The multitasking leads to more multitasking. One thing leads to more of that one thing.
I'm 100% agree with you. Yeah. That's why I got an office, and that's why I will put stuff up in that office to remind me of the one thing I need to focus on right now.
I would
I'm
love to
wondering
find
what
more
it is.
clarity on the way of how I can put like focus on. I have one task, but for that one task I need to go over emails to get it from Germany information. I'm parallel like talking with people here in over WeChat, and there are like other ones. It's like so many factors coming in account, so that just like when you're in the middle of all these things, you need to get this all together, this informations, you know. I'm constantly like going from one person to collect everything from all the people for the different projects and so on. So maybe it's also kind of like me accepting or finding acceptance that this belongs to my job and that I'm not unfocused, but it's just like the nature of that work which makes it feel being unfocused. I don't know. It's just like,
Look, I can only say that, of course, we live in 2021. Everybody has to have access to email, phones, WeChat, WhatsApp, whatever, to get things done. Okay, maybe not every single person all the time, but that's what most people get information from. The fact that, for example, you need to get an email and WeChat information, it doesn't mean that you have to do them at the same time. When you're looking at email, you just look at the email, you get whatever you need, then you put email away, and then you focus on WeChat. Now, WeChat is a whole different universe, and if I ever crack how to focus on WeChat, I will be a millionaire, because WeChat is the most overwhelming and distracting thing ever, because it's work and personal, and it all gets meshed together. But to the limits of what we can do, like trying to like just do one thing at a time, even if it's 5 minutes. And I struggle with that sometimes, because of course, if I have my phone next to me, it might start buzzing. Like right now, I just pull it up, and then of course there's 1,000 messages that I'm choosing purposefully not to look at, because I will get distracted. But that is like an exercise. It's like meditation. Like if you allow your attention to keep floating, it will be floating all the time. I'm just gonna put another thing for anybody who doesn't know. Do look up this guy.
Educating to have a call, because you know it's like some things they're just like really like discussed in 3 to 5 minutes call, instead of like dragging like informations or conversations over a day or two.
Right.
This is also like preventing me, I think, like from feeling like, okay, I've reached somewhere, because it's just like dragging such a long time in different chats. So
you have the opportunity and the chance to say, look, can we have a call instead of having a bunch of messages, right? I dread phone calls, so I go the opposite way. But if that works for you to get it more focused and getting all the information in one go compared to getting a lot of text, that's a great example. Anybody who doesn't know who Dandapani is, please do look him up on YouTube. He's a Buddhist monk. He's a very funny Buddhist monk, and he has all this. I know, he's fantastic. And he makes a lot of good points about focus and attention, like where your attention goes, that's where you get things done, and so on. So do look him up. He's very funny. Thank you, Bjorg. Bye. I think she's gone already. Any other questions? Or sharing it? The monkey mind guy? No.
No.
Who's the monkey mind guy?
I think he's talking about the TED Talk.
Oh, monkey mind's extremely common. A lot of these areas like North Thailand, all the North, they all call it monkey mind.
Oh.
So it is very, very, very common reference, monkey mind amongst certain traditions.
He's very cute, actually, that monk who is talking about that.
So the 3 white lines there.
Look up the monkey mind TEDx.
So I have a question.
Yes.
As a more big picture thinker and a systems and strategist, which is more what I am, especially creative, what kind of strategies do you have for people who automatically see all the pieces that go together to create the one thing, but there's multiple big pieces that go to one? What do you recommend for them?
And what is the problem with the multiple things that make the one thing?
Well, because it seems a lot like multitasking. But when you're building something that's a lot bigger, there's a lot more tasks that go into that because there's a lot more strategies and things and components that go together. So for that, is there anything else that you help? Because I'm sure companies have this problem. I'm new to that, but.
Alicia,
This is a good point of like clarifying that when I say that multitasking is a lie, I mean multitasking in the smallest sense. As in having your attention in a moment pulled away in 1,000 different things, like writing an email and watching a movie or that kind of thing. I believe that the human mind, and we're all capable of having a lot of different projects happening and a lot of different ideas happening at the same time, is the way we approach them that might feel very overwhelmed. Because if we think of everything at the same time, it might be hard to clarify and to get focus. If you, for example, decide that, I'm going to give you an example, Monday morning from 9 to 10 is when I deal with project A. Maybe Tuesday after deal with project B. It doesn't mean that things don't happen in the meantime, but unless it's very, very time sensitive, you know that there's a place and a time when you deal with that. And so that can feel slightly less overwhelming because you know that it will get done when it will get done, unless it's super urgent.
Okay, so going on what Michelle is saying, Michelle just said forest in the trees, which is true. So what you're saying is look at the forest, but then just deal with one part of the forest at a time in a certain slot. Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
I think that what I need more help from you probably is the big picture thing, because I sometimes get too bogged down into the details. And of course, a balance would be lovely. But when you have a lot of big picture things and you find it hard to even rationalize what's happening, then one step at a time, one project, one thing. Okay, I've done this. I can close it for now. Let's say the fire is put out. I cannot think about that until the next fire or until I make time to deal with the next fire. It might be in 2 hours. It might be in 3 days. It might be next month.
Alicia, I think another way of looking at what it is that you're speaking about, and I think that it's particularly valid because if you're anything like me, there's multiple things happening at the same time. But just like if you're renovating a house, you might be regrouting the tiles in the bathroom, and then while you're waiting for that to dry, you might go and repaint the skirting boards in the kitchen. And then while you're waiting for that to dry, you might go and fix the leaky washer in the basin in the bathroom. All of those things can happen sequentially because there's a bit of downtime while you're waiting for the plan to come to fruition. You can't force things to happen until they're ready. But that doesn't mean that you need to spend that time while you're waiting as a dead time, because there will be those opportunities. When you're waiting for the reply from that person who you're waiting for the reply for, send 6 other emails, go and do your internet banking, send your invoices, pay the bills that need to be paid, and then go back to that email when it finally comes in. It's about using your time efficiently and using the opportunities where you are waiting for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place to prepare the other ones so they're ready to drop when the sequence is ready.
Thank you.
Hello, Maria. I have a question. When you say we need to be focused and attention, distractions don't get done, it was mentioned. When do you give a rest on this being focused? When you give a rest to your brain, when you give a rest to before going to the next task that you have on your calendar, is like, now I need a rest. But what type of rest do you give to your attention, to your brain, in order to do the next thing that you have already planned? How does that happen? Because we cannot be focused all the time. We need these a little rest or breaks that we for our brain as well, right? To be also very efficient and effective, and to give or the results that you are looking for.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm the third. Look, I like what I do, but I don't like to work 24 hours a day. I end up working probably more than I should, but I don't like to work all the time, because that's not good for anybody. And the idea of like scheduling yourself to just focus, that's not going to be effective either, because your brain has a finite amount of energy, regardless what we say to ourselves. And so if we only try to just go, we'll burn out at some point. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but it will happen at some point. So Maggie's question of when do you give rest is extremely important. It depends what rest you need. You might need a 1 day off after a very intense couple of days. You might need a walk in the park at lunchtime after a very intense morning. You might just need to get up from your desk and just go around the apartment, or like go and cuddle a cat or a dog or something. Just get out of a screen. I think that rest is as important as focus, because if we don't have one, we cannot have the other. Focus is not sustainable in the long run if you don't get the energy back. To the surprise of probably no one, I am an extremely introverted person. I don't particularly like to hang out with people, especially in big groups. If I do that for work, then I need at least an evening or time to decompress. If I can't get, if I need to be social for multiple days at a time, I will shut myself in my house and not talk to anybody for a day. I've done that many times, because I know that I need a mental break in order to be able to do it.
Right.
And so it might depend on whatever rest looks like. It might be physical rest, like sleep, nap. It might be environmental breaks, getting out of the house, getting out of town if you can. It could be, just not thinking about work and go and watch a movie and hang out with friends and go and do an activity. All of those things extremely important, done. I usually try to say on purpose, because I don't know if you guys have ever, I'm sure you have experienced it, or oh, I'm not looking at the email, I'm just going to quickly have a rest and look at my phone. Then half an hour later, you have not done anything, but you don't feel particularly rested because that was not intentional. You kind of breeze through 30 minutes of randomly scrolling on your phone, but you didn't really get a break. Your mind didn't really switch.
No, it didn't. Yes.
And so you didn't lose those 30 minutes, but they were not as useful if you had actually gotten up and maybe taken a 20-minute nap. Maybe that would have helped actually resting your brain better. Or even, 1 hour of just walking. It's a longer time, but it might be more beneficial than just switching from one screen to the other. Especially these days, everybody's always watching some of the screens. So that might be something that is more necessary. I don't know if that answers your question.
It did, because what I do is okay, this task is for work. I do it, but I haven't replied to my friend that asked me for something that I should. So before going to that is personal, I do first work, said, okay, now I'm taking a break. My focus is not on this task, but to answer to her, that then maybe the conversation got heavier and it wasn't a rest at all. And then I need to refocus to the task from work. And it was hard, it gets harder to refocus to what is important for work, because that conversation exhausted me a little bit when I thought it was going to like release me from the hard work, and it didn't help. So I wanted to ask, what is the break that you take that actually like for this important thing, this one is not important, your friend, but should that thing actually, I change from screen to screen, but the other conversation also absorbs so much from me.
Right. And I don't know your particular situation, and you might not be able to foresee that, right? But if you know already the kind of people that you deal with, and maybe you know that your friend has a lot going on, and you know that your friend needs support, you might want to think, okay, maybe I don't answer them right now because I'm in the middle of doing a couple of other things. Maybe I can just quickly text them. I'll be able to talk a little bit, tonight or tomorrow. And then you give them, then you don't make the time for that right now, because that would, impact both of you, because maybe you're still focused on work and you're not fully present with your friend. And that conversation then also impacts your mindset to work. So it might not work in all the circumstances, but that's something to think about, of like being more mindful, like, sorry, I can't talk right now. Can we talk later? I think that's something that not many people do. We should just do it more. I don't know.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt for a second. Maria, thank you very much for a beautiful session. We are just on time now. We finish up on time. However, you're all welcome to stay here another 5 or 10 minutes. I want to thank you all very much for coming today. Thank you all very much for coming. It's lovely to see some wonderful new faces here. Next week, we're going to have Kat. Kat's from Germany, but she's over in South Africa at the moment. She's a coach from Shanghai. She's talking about the growth mindset. And I'm not sure exactly what's going to come up in that session. And I guess we'll see soon. So we're going to stay around another 5-10 minutes. Maggie, thanks for your beautiful question. We had some beautiful questions in sharing today. Emma, Nadia, Emily, Ella, Dayo, and a couple of other new names I haven't seen before in here have disappeared now. It's like we got like 3 Emilys and Emilys. Thank you all very much for coming, and all coaches in the house, thank you very much. Thank you. We'll be here for another 5-10 minutes. Do feel free to ask anything or check out if you want to. Thank you all very much for your support, and we see you again on the other side. Maria?
I have nothing else to add. If anybody is interested in anything that I do, just drop me a message or connect with me. I'm going to just put my things on the chat in case. I'll just pull it up again.
And Jacopo, warm hugs to Rome, Iceland, and everywhere in between.
Thank you.
All my okay. Thank you all so much for hanging out. And who else is over there?
Thanks, Maria. That was great.
Of course. Thank you all. Thank you for the support. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye for now.
And all the coaches, but we're just supporting. I'm sure we're not learning anything. I mean,
no, absolutely not. Who would learn anything at any point?
I reprinted out my little mind map, my bigger why, my smaller why, my to do, and I put that back on the wall.
Adrian, I don't think I've learned anything since about 1845.
Since 1845.
I have actually, I've taken out all the Post-its I have, usually because this is where I look. This is like where I look when I work. And so I've taken out all the Post-its that usually hang out over there. But I have all my little Post-its with all the things I need to focus on. It's not very pretty to look at. The books are nicer.
Is that environmentally sustainable?
What, the post-its?
Not so sure if she's caring about that actually.
Well, I certainly don't. No, wait, that's been recorded. Damn it.
It's okay, it's the end. Adrian can cut it.
You've just snipped that out.
It was nice talk. Very, it's necessary. We know, but I know, but I still do. I still get overwhelmed, even if I know what to do. So it's good to talk about it all the time.
Let me stop sharing this. John, why do you think that is?
It is what?
You said that even if you know what to do, you still feel overwhelmed. Is that what you said?
Yeah. It's even if I know that I need to focus, I need to be mindful to focus on one thing. The brain is just jumping all around. You have to constantly just bring it back. Sometimes you just get too tired about it, and just go with the flow and just to run whatever, and then coming back after like 3 hours. Well, it happens a lot, but it is good to be conscious about it and then come back. I have a trick.
Do what I do. Just get rid of your brain. That's what I do.
Go to sleep. Sometimes I do that. Take a nap.
Ida, I wanted to say something in a similar direction. It's like, just don't care about your mind. Just let it go. You are not your mind. Your mind has her own life.
Yeah, then the mind is jumping all over. That's the next thing is multitasking a lot of things.
Hey,
You
guys haven't met Kat here yet, I think. I think maybe a couple of you have, but Kat was over.
I think we met on Zoom.
Hey guys, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Again. Thanks, Maria, for your lovely talk. It was super interesting. And I'm excited to see you. If you're interested, next week, I'll be covering academic life coaching, focusing on academics and what it does to your brain, to children, teachers, how stereotypes can threaten you. And it will go all the way with tools to the growth mindset and what an influence it has. I did my studies about it and I published a paper just recently. So we'll be just joining in and talking about growth mindset.
Sounds awesome.
Sounds exciting. I won't chime in with my 2 cents as much as I did with Maria, because I'll be interested to learn. Not that I wasn't interested in Maria's conversation, but that's
digging yourself full. Digging yourself full.
That's where I live. The deeper I get, the happier I am.
Okay, now you guys.
It's nice to meet you, Kat. I'm here in Shanghai too. And I've been a teacher for 23 years. So I'll be very interested to hear your talk next week.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. I just left Shanghai, but it will be great.
You don't look like you're in Shanghai just from the fact that you're wearing a tank top.
No, I'm in South Africa. I just moved here.
Sounds nice and warm.
It is nice and warm. I don't want to show you my view. That's why I'm turning around.
Is it like of the Cape or something? I'm
Is it
just trying to look around the camera. What's
Now
the
you
view?
have to show it. Show it.
Show.
View.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So that's
Just another beach and nature. We here in our world.
Sorry, guys.
But it's a real problem, isn't it, Kat? It's a real problem. I mean, you can't get your video to focus on you and the beach at the same time. It's a challenge. You see the camera goes in and out.
Yeah.
So we face the wall.
Extra lighting.
Yeah, I think I'm actually just renovating my study room. So next week we'll be in my study room. So or like teaching room, coaching room. So no more beach next week.
All right.
Okay, everyone, cool, hunky dories. We'll see everyone Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday night. If anyone's forgotten, Wednesday night we're doing our coaching practice. Sorry, Maria.
I just said thank you everybody for hanging out, and see you all whatever I see you, and see Kat next week.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Yeah,
Bye,
nice
people.
work.
Bye.
Go reply your 1,000 message.
Bye, guys. See you next week.
I do it more in the morning. No.
Good night.